afternoon. I'm John White. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Bayport, South Africa, a proud employer of over 300 female employees. But I'm also a father, a husband, a brother, and someone who feels very scared and anxious sometimes when the women in my life are out in society on their own. I think it's a very important and essential campaign, and in fact this year I've been adamant that as Bayport we need to be more expressive and more public about our condemnation of violence against women and children. The campaign is a small step to drive public awareness around the scourge that exists in our society, and only through communication and ongoing communication can we hope to reduce incidents of violence against women and children.
I think it's a very important campaign, especially given the prevalence of gender-based violence against women and children in our country. Sad to say though that this is one campaign that is actually underrated and under-supported. I just wouldn't want to point a finger at who's not supporting this entirely, or at least to that extensive level. But it is said that this is one campaign that ought to be supported entirely, but we don't seem to see that kind of support happening. But what we continue to see and hear about is stories, sad stories about women and children suffering at the hands of men, particularly men in their lives.
I think it's very important to have these campaigns, and especially the 16 days of activism is an important tool. However, I don't believe it's the only aspect when it comes to fighting a pandemic like GBV. I think there's a much more that can be done in terms of action.
Honestly, I don't agree. Again, you just need to follow the news to see why I say that. The number of gender-based violence are not decreasing. In fact, for me it's just increasing. However, the campaign must continue. Even though we are not getting the results just yet, we must keep fighting for our women and children in South Africa.
No, I do not feel that this campaign has been quite effective. Over the past 31 years, a large number of women and children have gotten raped or killed. So the campaign obviously needs to be stepped up. Something more needs to be done. We cannot have a statistic where 1,000 women a day get raped or killed in our country. Quite clearly it shows that there must be more that should be done to protect our women and children.
I think there's a definite social and economic disparity in our country, which everyone is well aware of. But to me, that's linked to all crime and can be one of the major reasons for all crime. It's difficult when it comes to specifically thinking about gender-based violence and violence against children as to the reasons. But I do believe that there is a lack of resources made available to the police when it comes specifically to fighting gender-based violence and violence against children. And also these limited resources are not being used effectively. So I think that's one of the major contributions that has resulted in this increase in statistics.
It has increased because the punishment within the law system in South Africa is not harsh against GBV criminals. It should be harsher to send out a stronger message to the criminals against this sort of crime.
Very, very, very sad statistics, and again a reflection of our sad reality as men, particularly in South Africa. In the main, look, there could be a lot of factors that goes into that. We are termed a fatherless society in some instances. We are termed an angry society in some instances. And a lot of these could be as a result of many, many things that may have happened. And Socialization could also be one of the things, because a lot of kids, male children, are not taught some of these things as they grow up. They tend to figure things as they go along, and as a result, this now presents a challenge in their lives, because they don't know how to navigate some of these challenges that they face as adults or young adults in the society. And most of them would now end up being perpetrators to these horrendous crimes.
All right, so I think that perpetrators have found a very safe space in our society. Perpetrators do not fear the consequences of what could happen to them if they commit such a crime. So the latest crime statistics are an indicator that there's quite a huge problem in our country. There's a problem with the justice system. There's a problem in the way that we teach our men. There's a problem in the way that we even deal with gender-based violence in the workplace, in schools, and in our safe spaces where we enjoy ourselves.
In South Africa, one, we need to show that we don't tolerate this. Every time we see a perpetrator, we need to deal it up front. We need to handle it, we need to deal it. Even if it's a threat, you must deal it. Secondly, we need to show examples of people that have perpetrated this going to jail and staying in jail and being dealt with appropriately. People oftentimes get away with light sentences, which is not right, because they go on and do these things. Thirdly, we need to support these families, because if a child goes and says this has happened, there's no reason why the child will be lying. We need to listen to the child and find protection mechanisms to enable those children not to go back to the perpetrators. Because if it's happened in the family, why would you send that child back to that family? That child must go to a safe house. So we need to strengthen the mechanisms of protecting people from these perpetrators.
Best way to combat, I think we as men, we need to work together. Since I say that the security is not that tight, our police force is not doing the right work. Okay, so I feel like as men, we need to take action by protecting our women, looking after these women. Because when I'm saying women, we're talking about our daughters, our mothers, our sisters. So I feel like we need to work as a team and make sure that they are safe wherever they go, by taking care of them at work, whether it's at work or at home.
I would say firstly to allow women and children to speak out, and then secondly, let survivors and activists know that they have our support and we stand by them. And then thirdly would be to promote acceptance of all genders, identities being men, women, and the LGBTQ plus community. And then I would say lastly is to donate to organizations that empower women and children. Alright, I mean, gender-based violence is profound and widespread. It is also a human violation. Based on our stats, 1 in 3 women and girls experience gender-based violence in their entire lives. It is a shocking statistic that represents the reality of violence within our communities. So I would urge all South Africans that, let us stand together, let us support our women and children, and let us teach our boys from a young age that we need to support one another.
I think we need to start taking responsibility. We've all identified that there is a problem. We have identified that it is a pandemic and that the numbers, everything that shows you that this is a problem. We need to take responsibility for that as men and realize that we do have a massive responsibility, because most of the time we are the perpetrator. And it starts with the smallest of thoughts and it can escalate to something major. So identify the problem early, and we as men need to protect the women in our country with as much as we can.
It has to end. It has to end soon. Let's stop gender-based violence.
Quite simply, women and children are and should be our most treasured assets. They are fragile, very exposed, unable often to defend themselves, living very often in a culture of fear and violence and male domination. That is not how it should be. Our women and children are precious, and they should be treated as such.
Genoeg is genoeg.
Sizwile. Enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
So we must end gender-based violence now. Tshwantse re qete nthwena, re emise e fele, ha re batle. We don't tolerate it, we don't like it. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Ho fedile, re utlwile, ha e fele, ha e stope, ha e lale.